Hey everybody, today I'm going to be reviewing The 400 Blows. This film came out in 1959. It was directed by Francois Truffaut. I think this might be the first French New Wave film I've done on this channel. I'd have to look back, but if that's true, that's really weird that it's taken this long, but I guess better late than never. Truffaut is one of the most iconic filmmakers in cinema history and certainly one of the very finest. He is one of the main founders of the French New Wave movement that started kind of in the late 1950s along with people like Jean-Luc Godard, maybe you've heard of him. But I think The 400 Blows is just very integral to the inception of the New Wave movement. It really did help solidify it as a movement. And extraordinarily, this is Francois Truffaut's directorial debut in terms of just like feature-length movies, and that to me is absolutely astounding to have this kind of this maturity, the ability to express simplicity but also ambiguity at the same time through a very familiar formula, the coming-of-age formula. The New Wave movement, much like the Italian neo-realist movement, which was more popular maybe in the decade prior, they were both reactions to post-war Europe in many ways. I mean, it was kind of a stripping away of the romanticism of films and the theatricality. And they're going here more for a simplicity, a naturalism, and typically these stories involve a lot of working class people and often non-actors. And the films tend to be very low budget, though even though they do seem overall just more raw and more stripped down, almost like documentary filmmaking at times, it is still quite cinematic. It has hints of very cinematic styles and more kind of experimental styles. Interesting editing choices as well. You know, jump cuts were a big thing in New Wave. And I think just that touch of the cinematic, those whiff of cinematic flourishes that we get here, just comes from the influence of, a lot of these young French filmmakers were very into a lot of the auteurs of the time. Orson Welles, as an example, apparently was a huge influence on Truffaut, which is somewhat ironic because when you think of Orson Welles, you think of somebody who's very grand in spectacle, he's very theatrical, though at the same time, he is known for kind of fusing all of that kind of classical filmmaking with very modern sensibilities. So even though he might be very different than Francois Truffaut, just in style, I do kind of get that personal touch, that feeling of Orson Welles somehow in it. But it so works for this particular story. And this is a semi-autobiographical story that is meant to resemble the life of Francois Truffaut himself during his childhood. And a huge part of his childhood was escape, going to the movies. And for the character here that is kind of representing him as a child, it is very similar. It's as if this boy in the film, it's like he experiences everything in the world and his perceptions of it through a sort of a cinematic lens. And then it's contrasted at the same time with more kind of mundane living, harsh aspects of life. And as I said, this is a coming-of-age story about a boy who is, in the middle of his adolescence. He's maybe, I'm going to guess, maybe 13, 14 years old. His family is poor. He has a rough home life. His parents are constantly fighting with each other. Then he goes to school, and of course he struggles a lot at school, and he feels just completely lost and unable to shape an identity in a world that, seemingly wants to repress those instincts that should be nurtured. He has a curiosity about him and a rebellious nature. When he and his parents go to see a movie, he talks about he really sensed a lot of the depth in the movie and was intrigued by the depth. But he's also somebody who really wants that independence. As I've also said, he has a major desire to escape this reality and, certainly the very flawed education system, just the flawed social system in general, and really claim his life as his own, as we all want. And this film, it takes place just in that time in your life, that awful time where you're not a kid, but you're not an adult. It's like you're old enough to question everything and question your surroundings and wish to have that independence and that identity. And yet at the same time, you're too young to be respected, by the adults and taken seriously. It is that mix of somebody who is, feeling kind of isolated and melancholy, yet they have that energy that young boys have, that vigor to explore as your innocence is slowly fading away. And it is, as I said at the beginning, it is so incredible to me how simple and clear everything is presented to you, and yet at the same time, the characters do feel very complex, very well defined. But that does kind of give you a feeling of what children sort of experience, I think. They sense the world around. They sense complexity a lot more than I think adults give them credit for sure. But at the same time, they settle into the simplicity and are okay with that far more than adults typically. And his mother and father, I mean, it's not technically his real father, not his biological father, but they're his guardian. They are both total assholes, and they're assholes to him. They don't understand him, and they don't really understand how to connect with him either. So they become very authoritative, but they're not villains in the traditional sense. They have their good qualities at times, but they're also very just normal, very, very flawed people. And the performances here are wonderful, but I'm not really surprised by that. I think that tends to happen when you get non-actors, surprisingly, non-professional actors who are completely impressionable. They don't have some movie star persona that you can spot a mile away where it's hard to fall into a new character. You can help build that throughout the film and in the film because they are unknown. And so often that just feels more authentic to me than when you get established actors. Like I find myself more connecting with Italian neo-realist characters and performances than I would maybe like more formalist Hollywood movies of the time. And here we do have a mix of that, people that are more inexperienced and actual actors as well. The young boy here is very closely associated with Francois Truffaut and was throughout his entire career, but I think he is absolutely brilliant in this film. Unforgettable. Honestly, I hadn't seen this film in a long, long, long time, but I remembered him very, very well. He just has the most wonderful face that encapsulates everything that this character feels, and that is very important. It's a face that somehow manages to be both youthful but jaded at the same time. Fresh and old, if that makes any sense, in terms of how it makes me feel when I watch him. And he has a depth to him, definitely, and a darkness that is very intriguing. And you feel every moment you're following this kid. You relish in every thrill, and you hurt when he is repressed. And you feel every moment that you follow him. You relish in every thrill he experiences, yet you hurt when he feels alone or mistreated. Part of, I think, what makes him so compelling is because they just allow the face to do a lot of the work and less of the dialogue. The film shows a lot of moments where nothing is happening in particular to this character, yet it gives him such an authenticity. I love those little moments, like in the beginning when he comes home from school, his parents aren't home yet, he's doing his chores and all that. He sneaks into his mother's room and he sits down and he starts messing with her eyelash curler, putting it on his eyelashes. It's a small moment, but that curiosity and it's, I don't know, it's really nice. It's really beautiful to me. Another moment that I really like is when his mother is talking to him at the end of the film. It's like the second to last scene, and she's really barking at him a lot, and he just kind of tunes out and he kind of just looks up and the camera drifts up to the top of her hat and starts focusing on that. And the camera is as if it was from his point of view. And I love that too. We can all relate to that. And not just as kids. I do that today when somebody's just talking to you, especially an authority figure, and you just kind of tune out. As the film goes on, there is an increasing sense of melancholy and certainly rejection that you feel as a viewer as you're taken on this kid's journey, because he is, as I said, he is learning and he's really navigating the world and trying to find his place in it. But he doesn't know how to express himself maybe in a way that is socially acceptable yet. And that leads to a lot of negative situations. When he gets arrested and he's riding in the back of that, truck or whatever it is in the car, as he's going to jail, and he's looking at the city through these bars, and, he has tears coming down his face. And there is, I adore that moment. It is probably one of my very, very favorite moments in the film. It has such a complex feeling attached to it. It's a mix of very rich emotions. There's this overwhelming feeling of him just looking at everything and trying to soak it all in, the beauty and the pain and just the experiences. There's so much to offer, yet, he's looking at it all through, a barred window. It's so moving. It is so profound, and it says so much with no words. And films like that say so much with so little, like, maybe Tokyo Story by Ozu. Films like that to me are kind of the true gems of the world. And the more he is dehumanized, of course, naturally, the more that his innocence is leaving him. And it almost feels like a spirit leaving the body through the mouth. There is a moment where he gets his mugshot taken, and of course, the frame freezes as though, he's getting his picture taken. And then at the end of the film, there is that very iconic last scene, that moment on the beach, which is this representation of existentialism, searching for answers, having this boundless place, this ocean in front of you that kind of represents that transitional period. But then there is a freeze frame right on his face. And again, it feels like a snapshot of his face, very similar to when he gets the mugshot taken. And that there's just a tinge of that bitterness there. Again, having the world at your fingertips, but knowing that you're always going to be almost like frozen in a box. People are going to try to put you in boxes, try to categorize you into somebody that you may not necessarily be or want to be. But I was so moved by the film, seeing it now as I am older. And I just think that if you're somebody who maybe doesn't have a lot of experience with the French New Wave as a genre, I think this is a good place to start. Again, it is kind of an introduction to it, but really I think it is absolutely the perfect film to begin that venture. And that is my review. Thank you guys so much for listening. All of my Patreon supporters are here. You guys are amazing. The link to support that is below. I also want to let you guys know that I am an artist. I know I say that every time, but I do commission portraits and I have prints available on my website below. If you're interested in working with me or purchasing anything, you know, certainly you can let me know. You can email me, DM me. It does make a good holiday gift. And if you are a Patreon member, I do have discounts for you for the holidays. So just go to Patreon and I'll let you know a little bit more about that. But beyond that, yeah, just my social media and everything is below. You can watch more videos here and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.